Level 1, the applicant. You sit in a preet near Vauxhall Cross, nursing cold coffee, waiting. You applied 6 months ago. The website looked like a graduate recruitment page for Deloitte. Diversity statements, pension schemes, work-life balance. You filled out psychometric tests, situational judgment questionnaires. You never heard back. Then, 3 weeks ago, a phone call, a woman's voice, polite, neutral. She gave you a date, a time, a cafe name. She didn't give you her name. Now you wait, you watch the door. Every person who enters could be her, could be him, could be nobody. The uncertainty is the first test. You don't know this yet, but they're watching how you handle not knowing. Whether you check your phone compulsively, whether you look nervous, whether you leave early. A man in his 40s sits down across from you without asking. Gray suit, unremarkable face, the kind of face you forget immediately. He asks you 3 questions about your application. He asks you 1 question about your mother. He asks you what you think you're doing here. You try to sound confident. You try to sound humble. You try to find the balance between eager and cool. You have no idea if you're succeeding. After 12 minutes, he stands up. He says someone will be in touch. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. You finish your coffee alone. It tastes like burned aluminum and adrenaline. Level 2, the candidate. You're in. Sort of. You've passed the first filter. Now you're one of 300 candidates going through the real vetting. You attend assessment centers in anonymous office buildings in Reading and Northampton. You do group exercises with strangers who might become colleagues or might disappear next week. You role-play scenarios, a hostile negotiation, an asset recruitment, a deception under pressure. Assessors watch from behind one-way glass, taking notes you'll never see. The background checks start. They go deep. Financial records. School friends you haven't spoken to in 15 years. They interview your ex-girlfriend. They interview your university roommate. They ask about your drinking, your politics, your sexuality, your debts, your parents' debts. They're looking for leverage, not just foreign leverage, any leverage, addiction, money problems, secrets that could be weaponized. You pass the developed vetting. Not everyone does. Some candidates vanish from the process without explanation. You never find out why. You sign the Official Secrets Act in a windowless room. The woman administering it speaks in a monotone, like she's done this 2,000 times. She has. You initial every page. Your signature makes it real. You're no longer fully a civilian. You're not yet an officer. You're in between. You're property of the crown, waiting for assignment. Level 3, the junior. Your first day at Vauxhall Cross, you get a building pass with a photo that makes you look like a convict. You're assigned to a desk in an open plan office that could be anywhere. KPMG, the home office, a mid-tier insurance firm. You spend 3 months in foundational training, report writing, intelligence assessment, source handling theory, surveillance awareness. You learn the acronyms, CX for agent reports, SIS for the service itself, never MI6 except in Hollywood, human, SIGINT, OSINT. You learn how to write so that information compartmentalizes cleanly, so that one person reading a report can't reverse engineer who provided it. You're rotated through departments: counterterrorism, counterproliferation, Russia desk, China desk. You sit in on briefings where officers back from the field present intelligence so sensitive it doesn't get written down. You take notes on paper and the paper gets shredded before you leave the room. You're the most junior person in every meeting. You make tea. You collate reports. You sit quietly and learn. Your salary is £33,000. Less than you'd make in consulting. Less than some of your university friends make in marketing. You can't tell anyone what you do. You tell your parents you work in the Foreign Office. You tell your friends you're in civil service policy. At parties, you're the most boring person in the room by design. You practice being forgettable. You're good at it. You have to be. Level 4. The field. You're selected for operational training. Not everyone is. Some officers spend entire careers in analysis in London, never running an agent. You're going out. You do the 18-week course, surveillance, counter-surveillance, defensive driving, elicitation techniques, how to build a cover story and live it so deeply you half believe it yourself, how to identify developmental targets, how to manipulate without looking like you're manipulating. You learn dead drops, brush passes, covert communications. You learn how to spot a tail in a city you don't know, how to lose them without making it obvious you knew they were there. Yeah, you do exercises in European cities, Prague, Berlin, Istanbul. You recruit role players posing as foreign nationals. You meet them in hotel bars and cafes and park benches. You build rapport. You find their pressure points: money, ideology, compromise, ego, MI6, they call it. You learn which buttons to push and when. You fail some exercises, everyone does. You get hauled into a debrief room and told exactly what you missed. The eye contact you held too long. The question you asked too directly the moment you stopped listening because you were already planning your next move. You learn from failure here, because out there, failure means imprisonment or death. Not yours, usually. Your agent's, the person who trusted you. That weight starts to settle on you now in training. It never fully lifts. Level 5, the case off. You're posted. Nairobi, Istanbul, Mexico City. Somewhere with a station, a chief of station, and a diplomatic cover that makes you untouchable unless you fuck up badly enough to get PNG'd, declared persona non grata, and kicked out of the country. Your cover is Second Secretary Political Affairs or Trade Attaché or Cultural Liaison. You attend embassy functions, you smile at cocktail parties, you're hunting, you identify targets, foreign government officials, military officers, scientists, businessmen with access. You engineer encounters that look accidental. A shared table at a restaurant, a conversation at a gallery opening, you're patient. You meet them 4, 5, 6 times before you ever ask for anything. You build friendship, trust. You find the crack in their loyalty, like the grievance, the greed, the idealism betrayed. You widen it carefully. When you recruit someone, it's not like the films. There's no dramatic offer in a shadowy parking garage. It's a slow turn. Favor asked. A piece of information shared. A payment made that could be explained as consultancy fees, then another, until one day they realize they've crossed a line they can't uncross. They're yours now. You run them. You meet them in secure locations. You give them taskings. You collect their intelligence. You keep them alive. Some of them get caught. You hear about it secondhand. A developmental you met twice is arrested in Tehran. A source you ran for 2 years disappears in Riyadh. You don't know if they're dead. You probably never will. You file the report. You move on. You have to. The operation continues. The next recruitment begins. You sleep less well than you used to. Level 6, the senior case. You're back in London between postings. You're senior now, 15 years in. You've run dozens of agents. Some of them are still active. Some of them are burned. Some of them are dead. You carry that. You run operations from Vauxhall Cross now, coordinating field officers abroad. You sit in on Joint Intelligence Committee briefings. You help shape intelligence assessments that go to the Prime Minister. Your reports influence policy. Sometimes they influence whether people live or die in countries you'll never visit. You know the game now in a way the juniors don't. You know that most intelligence is mundane, that the high-stakes glamour is 5% of the work. The rest is bureaucracy, admin, liaison meetings with MI5 and GCHQ and the Americans. You know that the CIA officers you work with are better funded and more arrogant and sometimes sloppier than you. You know that Russian intelligence is patient and ruthless and very, very good. You know that Chinese intelligence is outpacing everyone, and most people in Westminster don't realize it yet. You've been compromised once, not fully burned, but close. An agent you ran in Beijing was a double. You didn't know for 7 months. The intelligence he fed you was good enough to pass muster, seeded with just enough poison to misdirect an operation in Hong Kong. When you found out, you felt it like a knife. Not because of the operation, because you trusted him, because you thought you were better than that. You learned. You don't trust the same way anymore. Your marriage ended 3 years ago. She knew you worked for the Foreign Office. She didn't know what you really did. She knew you lied about where you went and who you met. She just didn't know why. You couldn't tell her. The secrets became a wall. One day, she stopped trying to climb it. You don't blame her. Level 7, you're director of a regional department now. It's Russia and Eurasia, or Middle East and North Africa, or counterterrorism. You oversee hundreds of officers and operations. You sit in Cobra meetings during crises. You brief the foreign secretary. You authorize operations that could spark diplomatic incidents or save hundreds of lives. The decisions are yours. So is the accountability. You manage agent networks you'll never meet. You read their intelligence and sanitize reports, stripped of identifying details. You make calls about their safety from a desk in London while they're in a hotel room in Damascus or a dacha outside Moscow, knowing they could be arrested at any moment. You authorize payments, exfiltrations. Sometimes you authorize nothing because the risk is too high or the asset's value doesn't justify the exposure. You make that calculation. You live with it. You know things the public will never know. You know which foreign leader is dying and lying about it. You know which ally is playing both sides. You know which terrorist plot was disrupted last month and which one is still developing. You know that the world is more fragile and more volatile than the news suggests. You know how thin the margin is between stability and chaos. You're one of the people holding the line. It's exhausting. It doesn't stop. You've lost friends in the service, not to enemy action usually, to burnout, to disillusionment, to the slow realization that the work never ends and the victories are quiet and the losses are loud. Some of them leave for consulting jobs or think tanks. Some of them drink too much and retire early. You stay. You don't know why anymore, except that you can't imagine doing anything else. Level 8. You're running a station abroad again. Not Nairobi this time. Moscow. Beijing. Washington, liaising with the Americans. You're the senior UK intelligence officer in country. You have a small team of case officers under you. You manage liaison with local services when there's cooperation. You run unilateral operations when there isn't. You're operating in hostile territory where the counterintelligence services are skilled and aggressive. You assume you're surveilled constantly. You assume your phones are tapped and your residence is bugged. You act accordingly. You've stopped recruiting personally. You oversee recruitments. You approve operations. You manage risk. You deal with the diplomatic fallout when an operation goes sideways. You spend more time in meetings with the ambassador than you do in the field. You miss the field work sometimes, the direct contact, the thrill of the developmental. Then you remember why you stopped. You remember the station chief in Tehran in the 80s who got too hands-on and ended up in Evin prison for 3 years. You stay behind the desk. You've learned to live with the paranoia. It's not paranoia if they're really watching. You vary your routes. You check for surveillance every time you leave your residence. You clear your phone daily. You never discuss operational matters anywhere that isn't a secure facility. You've internalized the tradecraft so deeply it's become reflex. You don't turn it off when you go home. There is no home anymore. There's only the mission and the brief intervals between you're 53, your children are adults now. They grew up thinking you were a diplomat. They still do. You missed their childhoods for this. You missed birthdays and school plays and graduations because you were in Islamabad or Bogota or wherever the service sent you. You tell yourself it mattered. You tell yourself the intelligence you gathered saved lives. Some days you believe it. Level 9, the deputy. You're back in London for good now. You're deputy chief of SIS. You're one of 5 people at the top of the service. You sit on the Joint Intelligence Committee permanently. You brief the Prime Minister regularly. You coordinate with 5 GCHQ and international partners. You manage budgets in the hundreds of millions. You make strategic decisions about where the service focuses its efforts: China, Russia, Iran, cyber threats, transnational terrorism. You allocate finite resources to infinite threats. Something always goes unfunded. You live with that. You know every major operation the service is running. You know every significant agent. You approve the highest risk recruitments and the most sensitive exfiltrations. You sign off on operations that could end careers or start diplomatic crises. You do it with full knowledge of the consequences. You've seen colleagues fired for less. You've seen operations you approved go wrong, and officers you sent out not come back. Their names are in a file in your office. You look at it sometimes, you remember. You're consulted on policy you can't influence directly. You watch politicians make decisions based on incomplete information or political expediency, ignoring intelligence you know to be solid. You watch the machinery of government grind slowly while threats move fast. You've stopped being surprised. You've stopped being angry. You're just tired. You don't socialize much anymore. Your friends are mostly service, the people who understand what you do without you having to explain, the people who carry the same secrets and the same weight. You see them at retirement parties and funerals. There are more funerals now. People from your intake class dying of heart attacks and cancer and sometimes just exhaustion. You go, you shake hands, you remember who they were before the work hollowed them out. You wonder if you look the same to them. Level 10. The chief of your see now. The chief. You're the public face of an organization the public barely understands. You testify before the Intelligence and Security Committee. You give occasional speeches that say nothing specific. You manage relationships with the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, the heads of allied services. You're a bureaucrat as much as a spy master. You spend more time on budgets and personnel and political management than on operations. The operational decisions are made by people below you now. You set the direction, they execute, you know everything. Every operation, every agent, every failure, the weight of it is crushing. You're responsible for thousands of people in the field and in London, and for the agents they run, and for the intelligence that shapes national security. You're responsible when it goes right. You're responsible when it goes wrong. The successes are classified. The failures leak. You take the blame publicly for operations you didn't design and might not have approved if you'd been briefed earlier. You do it because that's the job. You've been doing this for 35 years. You've served in 6 countries. You've run agents in hostile territory and managed stations and climbed the ranks. You've seen the world change. The Cold War ended. The war on terror began and dragged on. China rose. Cyber became the new battlefield. The threats evolved. The service evolved. You evolved with it, or you tried to. You're not sure anymore if you succeeded or just survived. You're 61. You're retiring next year. You'll get a quiet ceremony, a handshake from the PM, and a pension. You'll be offered board positions and consultancy gigs. You'll write a memoir that the service will redact so heavily it reads like a grocery list. You'll fade into obscurity. Most people will never know your name. That was always the deal. But right now, somewhere in London, someone is sitting in a Pret near Vauxhall Cross, nursing cold coffee, waiting. They applied 6 months ago. A woman's voice called them 3 weeks ago and gave them a date, a time, a cafe name. They don't know what they're getting into. They think they do. They don't. They're watching the door. Every person who enters could be the one. Could be nobody. The uncertainty is the first test. You remember that feeling. You remember thinking you were ready. You weren't. Neither are they. Yeah, it doesn't matter. The cycle continues. Someone has to do this. Someone always does.